Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into one of the absolute most bizarre phenomena in the entire animal kingdom. Over the last few million years, scientists have noticed a highly unusual pattern. Completely unrelated animals, separated by massive spans of evolutionary time, just keep evolving into turtles. We're talking ancient reptiles, giant dinosaurs, and even warm-blooded mammals that have completely transformed their bodies to match this exact same shape. But why on earth would nature keep repeating this bizarre design? Today we're going to break down exactly why every time things evolved into turtles, it fundamentally changed their relationship with the planet itself.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Because, getting a shell, it's not just like throwing on a suit of armor. The biological cost of the turtle body plan is absolutely staggering. To achieve this shape, an animal has to go through a level of mutation that is, frankly, horrifying. We really need to look at what this actually means for the animal's skeleton and ask ourselves why any creature would actively pay such a massive biological price just to hide inside a box.
Section 1. The bone prison. So first things first, we've got to completely shatter that cartoon myth we all grew up with. You know the one, where a turtle gets scared and literally jumps entirely out of its shell, leaving it sitting there on the ground like a hermit crab. In reality, a turtle shell is definitely not a removable house. The shell is literally their permanent skeleton and they are locked inside it for life. To actually achieve this shape, normal ribs physically expand outwards. They flatten into wide plates and then they permanently fuse together. But the absolute most extreme part is step 3. Think about it. In a normal animal, your shoulder blades sit on the outside of your rib cage so you can move your arms, right? Well, in a turtle, the ribs actually grow over the shoulder blades, permanently trapping the shoulders inside the rib cage. It is a lifelong deformity of the skeletal system, where the spine and ribs are locked into a solid bone prison that can never ever bend or twist again.
And as you can probably guess, with a fused chest, you get a crippling breathing tax. You literally can't expand your ribs to pull air into your lungs. So to get around this, turtles evolved this crazy biological sling of abdominal muscles that pull their organs down just to create empty space for their lungs. It actually takes muscular effort just to take a single breath. And for some aquatic turtles, that's not even enough. They have to rely on cloacal respiration. Basically, they absorb oxygen from the water through highly vascularized tissues inside their cloaca. Nature essentially handed them invisible armor, but the catch? They literally have to breathe out of their rear end to survive. No way around it.
Section 2. Nature's ultimate copycats.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. Now that we really understand the sheer metabolic and physical penalty of fusing your skeleton into a box, it makes it all the more shocking to see the lineup of completely unrelated creatures that willingly accepted this deal. Take the Placodon, a Triassic marine reptile that looked and acted exactly like a sea turtle, but came from an entirely different branch of reptiles. Or the Glyptodon, an Ice Age mammal. This was a warm-blooded creature related to armadillos that gave up all of its mammalian speed and flexibility just to cosplay as a car-sized turtle. And then, of course, there's the mighty Ankylosaurus, a Cretaceous dinosaur that convergently evolved thick bone domes. 3 totally different species, all independently deciding to turn into a heavily armored box.
But, being a box has a pretty major flaw. The Glyptodon shell was absolutely incredible at stopping the nightmare fuel teeth of a Smilodon, or a saber-toothed cat. The cat bites, hits solid bone, gets exhausted, and leaves. Simple. But this creates what we call the turtle tax flaw. If a predator is smart enough to shove the top-heavy Glyptodon onto its unarmored belly, the short-limbed mammal physically cannot flip back over. It's just game over. The Ankylosaurus, however, engineered the ultimate weaponized fix. It covered its entire dome in razor-sharp bone spikes, essentially saying, "Don't even touch me," and then added a massive bone-shattering tail club. If a T-Rex got close enough to try and flip it, one swing would instantly shatter the predator's legs. The Ankylosaurus proved that if you add weapons to the turtle base, you literally become untouchable.
So, what exactly is the evolutionary trigger here? Why do these specific animals become turtles? Well, they all follow this exact copycat formula. First off, none of them are apex predators chasing fast prey. Second, they rely on extremely low-energy diets. We're talking Placodons eating clams, Glyptodons eating grass, Ankylosaurus eating ferns. Think about it. If your prey is literally a leaf, you don't need to be a track star. So instead of wasting precious energy building long legs or flexible spines to outrun fast-moving killers, they take all their evolutionary stat points and just dump them entirely into pure defense. It is the ultimate commitment to just standing perfectly still.
Section 3. A happy evolutionary accident. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is that you'd naturally assume the original turtle grew its shell specifically to protect itself from predators, right? Well, evolution doesn't always follow our logic. The original turtle didn't want armor at all. It took a highly uncomfortable, incredibly messy millions of years to build the modern shell. It definitely wasn't some overnight magical spawn. It started 260 million years ago with Eunotaurus, moved to a terrifyingly vulnerable middle step 220 million years ago with Odontochelys, before finally, eventually, reaching the fused dome we all recognize today.
Let's actually zoom in on that first step. Paleontologists discovered that Eunotosaurus had extremely wide and thick ribs, looking a lot like the early stages of a shell, alongside incredibly thick arm bones. But here is the crazy twist. Those widened ribs had absolutely nothing to do with stopping teeth. Eunotosaurus lived in a super harsh environment and needed to dig deep burrows into hard dirt. To dig without your own chest caving in, you need a rigid anchor for your arm muscles. It widened its ribs simply to build a shovel. What is now the animal kingdom's ultimate armor literally began as just a sturdy way to dig holes in the dirt.
Then, fast forward a bit to that super awkward middle step, Odontochelys. This early turtle had a fully formed shell, the plastron, only on its stomach. Its back was just normal ribs and soft exposed skin. Now, that sounds like a terrible design, right? Leaving your back completely open? But Odontochelys spent its time in shallow coastal waters. Down there, massive marine reptiles and ancient sharks hunted by swimming deep below their prey and looking up, waiting to strike the soft underbelly. It armored its stomach because that's exactly where the teeth were coming from. But it meant generations of these turtles were swimming around as awkward, half-armored targets before the top finally fused.
Section 4. Gravity and giant turtles.
Let's move along and see how this builds. If this fully formed turtle blueprint is such an ultimate defense, and getting bigger usually makes you harder to kill, why don't we have land tortoises walking around today the size of elephants? Well, the answer lies in this number right here, 900 pounds. That is roughly the maximum weight of the modern Galapagos tortoise, which is the largest living land turtle. The issue? Gravity. A turtle's shell isn't lightweight cartilage, it's dense, heavy bone. The larger the turtle, the exponentially heavier that bone becomes. If a multi-ton land turtle simply tripped over a rock and fell down a slight incline, the impact of thousands of pounds of bone slamming into the ground would be totally fatal. And hey, even if it survived the fall, the sheer weight pressing down on its lungs would slowly crush its own internal organs before it could ever flip over. On land, a massive dome eventually becomes a crushing death trap.
But then we have this massive number, 5,000 pounds. That was the weight of Archelon, a prehistoric marine reptile from the late Cretaceous period, making it the absolute largest turtle to ever exist on Earth. This thing measured over 15 feet long. So how on earth did it bypass the physical limits of the turtle body plan?
How did it pull that off? Simply by leaving the land entirely. In the ocean, buoyancy effectively cancels out the crushing weight of gravity. Archelon didn't need pillar-like legs to hold up its shell, and it certainly didn't have to worry about its own weight crushing its lungs. Escaping land allowed it to max out the turtle shape to just ridiculous proportions. And it needed that size for sure, because it shared the ocean with terrifying monsters like the mosasaur. It survived purely because its shell was so incredibly massive that almost nothing could even get its jaws around it.
Section 5. The evolutionary trap.
So, the crucial point here is that even when you remove that weight limit and completely max out your size, committing to the turtle blueprint comes with a tragic, inescapable flaw. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Fusing your ribs together and turning your body into a rigid box makes you immune to the things trying to eat you, but it demands a very specific, very slow-moving lifestyle. If a drought wipes out your vegetation, you are way too slow to sprint hundreds of miles to a new location like an antelope would. Heavily armored giants like the Glyptodon and Ankylosaurus just couldn't adapt to rapidly changing food sources and temperatures when the Ice Age ended or the asteroid hit. Their armor defeated teeth, for sure, but the rigid box ultimately caused their extinction because they couldn't outrun the changing planet itself.
And wildly enough, the animals that seem to understand this fatal flaw best are the actual turtles themselves. Instead of doubling down on heavy bone plates like their ancient ancestors did, the leatherback sea turtle, the largest living turtle today, has a shell made of flexible, leathery skin. Soft-shell turtles in rivers have totally abandoned bone for a rubbery pancake shape so they can bury into the mud at lightning speed. To dive thousands of feet to hunt jellyfish or to outswim a great white shark, you need to be light and hydrodynamic. The most successful modern turtles are actually trying to unturtle themselves just to survive. But here is the really profound, kind of terrifying reality we are left with. Even if a leatherback gets rid of the heavy bone, it can never, ever truly go back to being a normal animal. Once you flatten your ribs, trap your shoulder blades, and lock your spine into a solid dome, you can never undo it. A mammal can evolve to run faster, climb trees, or even return to the ocean to become a whale. But a turtle? A turtle can only ever be a turtle. It will never evolve wings and take to the sky. Turning into a box is undeniably an incredible survival tactic. It's exactly why every time things evolved into turtles across history, it works so well for them initially. But nature keeps building this box because it works in the moment, leaving us with this final thought to chew on. Once you step inside the box, evolution closes the lid and you are permanently locked into that shape forever. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the incredible world around us.